Welcome to this flipped instructional video for English 7B lessons 1.7, 1.8, and 1.9. This is Mrs. Alexander. Let's jump in. So in these lessons, you will be reading and rereading a short story called Saving Toby. When disaster strikes, several families come together to save Toby, but will they be too late? Well, that's up to you to make your prediction on what this could even be about. We have a dangerous river. Maybe you can relate to being in a dangerous situation. I want you to keep in mind that in these lessons, we'll be focusing on theme and central idea. So these are similar terms. We have our main messages of the story. In other videos, I talked more about theme and central idea, the differences between the two, and how to identify theme and central idea in your readings. After your lesson introduction, it has you always go through those before, during, and after reading strategies. These are strategies that I want you to always practice, no matter how redundant you feel like it gets in your lessons. Practice. If you're an athlete or if you've done any sort of hobby or skill or talent, you know that you have to practice. The same goes for being a good active reader. After you read, you'll look at the big ideas in this text. You'll practice identifying some of those big ideas using textual evidence and by using close reading strategies to identify those big ideas. Usually an author develops a central idea with setting, characters, and conflict, as you can see here in this lesson. So as you analyze that, be sure you're using textual evidence that supports that analysis. A strong analysis is always supported with strong textual evidence. So your lesson will walk you through those big ideas found in lessons 1.07. In lesson 1.8, you're going to look at plot development. You're going to reread Saving Toby, and when you reread, you're going to take a closer look at characters' interactions and word choice. Okay, you'll dive into lesson 1.9, which is still talking about the same reading. In this one, it's going to have you start making connections between this short story and maybe personal experiences. You'll also read a News ELA article that relates to this sort of experience that is described in this short story. So this lesson's all about making connections. This is where things really stick. So make sure you're not overlooking this lesson, and at the end of this lesson, you do have a quiz. And it'll ask you comprehension questions and analysis questions about this reading. So make sure you're using those learn sections of these lessons to really help you prepare. Hello and welcome to this flipped video for English 7B lessons 1.10 through 1.11. This is Mrs. Alexander. All right, in lesson 1.10, you'll be reading a short story called The White Umbrella, which is a short story that discusses family dynamics. It can be hard to understand why people do what they do, and this story examines complicated relationships between two sisters, their mother, and the country they came to live in and are brought to light in. I know for me, I can make a personal connection to this right off the bat. I have 3 sisters. I have an older sister, Monica. Then there's me. This is me. I'm next in line. Then I have a sister, Faith, and another sister, Nikki. I can relate. All of us here, we love each other, but we also sometimes have complicating issues, and that's common in families, and we have to figure out how to work through those together. So right off the bat, I want to make that connection to this. Think about if you have that connection to make, or if you don't, if you have read other stories where we review family dynamics and how sometimes complicated issues arise and we have to work through those together. Notice here in the Learn section, these are the things that we are going to pay attention to in this lesson. We're going to pay attention to viewpoint, which is not point of view. It's different. Okay? We're talking about point of view. We're talking about first person point of view. That's like I, me, narrator, right? When we're talking about second person point of view, that's maybe like in a procedural essay when you're telling somebody to do something, like you do this, blah, 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 blah. And then we have third person point of view. That's when we do have like a narrator, and they're using pronouns like he, she, they. Okay, so different than viewpoint. Viewpoint is the author's maybe perspective of a central idea or a theme. It could also be a character's viewpoint on a situation. So different than point of view. They both have that view in there, but it's different. And we're also going to look at character interactions and theme. So keep that in mind as you're going through your lessons. Remember, a theme develops over the course of a story through characters and their interactions. So theme doesn't necessarily just appear out of thin air. We want to pay attention to the characters, the interactions, the conflicts, and other parts of the plot that help develop that theme, that overall message. All right, and then the lesson has you reviewing textual evidence that helps develop your theme and the author or narrator's viewpoint. These are questions that you want to keep in mind that you might be asked about a little later. We'll also look at the viewpoint and symbolism, and then we'll dive into the next lesson, which is lesson 1.11. In this lesson, you'll be reading The Courage That My Mother Had. So in this poem, we're going to pay attention to the following things. These are keywords. In the Learn section of this lesson, 1.11, you will be looking at language, poem structure, and theme. These are key things to keep in mind as you're working through the lesson, things that you should really be able to not only identify, but explain and support.